Hi, and welcome to What Works, a show that taps into over 1,000 years of experience shared by our consortium members. I'm your host, Don Patrick, and I'm here to guide the conversation with guest advisors and lift the hood on what works for them both in business and life. It's all about learning and growing. Let's go. Welcome, everybody. This is episode number one What Works? Consortium member insights and stories from the field. Today, Matt Carpinelli is our guest and episode number one. Pretty cool. Matt's president, wealth advisor at AFC Wealth, located in Littleton, Colorado. It's a suburb of Denver out in the foothills, right, Matt?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Just about 30 minutes southwest of downtown Denver.
It's beautiful out there. It's gorgeous. And that's pretty much where you grew up, right?
It is. I used to drink beer where I live. Oddly enough, you had four-wheel drive to it or ride your motorcycle or mountain bike. But yeah, I didn't stray very far from the beginning.
So I didn't know that. So that's all the red rocks, and so you guys four wheel it out there and drink beer, and now you you got
Yeah,
a beautiful home there, right?
yeah, exactly. We'd have big campfires and big parties because it was so far out of the way that, you weren't bugging anybody. And the law certainly wasn't patrolling out here on a regular basis.
You're not that far from the Red Rocks amphitheater, are you?
No, probably a half hour south of there, but my backyard looks just like that. It's the same rock formation. It's called the Fountain Formation. That's 150 million years old. It's big red sedimentary rock that got pushed up that was an ancient seabed. So there's a bunch of fossils and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, my backyard, I'm looking out right now. It looks just like Red Rocks Amphitheater without all the concert goers and everything.
Sweet.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. So tell us a little bit about your family.
Well, I've got a wonderful wife, Jessica. We just celebrated our 22nd anniversary last Friday.
Awesome.
We met in
Congratulations.
college. I was really lucky to meet her. She moved out here from Maryland to go to the University of Colorado up in Boulder, and I ended up there in a roundabout way, and it was a learning experience to get there, but it was the best thing that ever happened to me because I met her. And we have two just incredible daughters. Juliana is just turned 20 years old. She's a sophomore at the University of Colorado. And her sister Carmen is 17 and she's a senior in high school. And we're trying to figure out how we can help her decide on where she's going to go to school next year. So it's been an interesting couple of years for us.
And what kind of activities and interests do the two young ladies have?
We've
Juliana, Carmen.
been really lucky. We kind of all like the same stuff, being outside, hiking. But selfishly, I had them started with a golf club when they were little tiny, just because, that's where we used to hang out. I would play golf with my buddies on Wednesdays. The girls would end up at the swimming pool with my buddy's family. And then after we hit some balls, play a few holes, and then all have dinner together. So both of my girls are, amongst a whole bunch of other sports, really taken to golf. And the youngest, Carmen, right now is state champion last June for the state of Colorado, her team. So,
That's amazing. Oh
yeah,
my gosh.
great way to spend 4 hours together. And, the older they get, fewer chances you have for that. And it's just been a great opportunity to be around one another.
That's I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. And Jessica, she was kind of corporate America, and then you had the girls, and she left corporate America and became a CrossFitter, and now she's a yoga instructor or something, right?
Yeah, she's an interesting character. It's, I like we're like the mismatch of all mismatches. She was worked at IBM. She interned there for 2 years in college, and then they gave her a wonderful job when she graduated. And she was the highest paid senior graduate of the University of Colorado Business School up until that time. That was 1999. So she had an amazing job, a great career for IBM. And then she decided to be a mom after we had Juliana, our first one. And the crazy thing about it, I I always tell people how amazing IBM was to her and to us because they kept us on the health insurance plan for 10 years,
Wow.
hoping she would come back to work.
That's that's amazing.
So it was fantastic and a huge help for us because, as you know, self-employed health insurance not cheap, but she's big into health and fitness and was a jujitsu practitioner for a lot of years and had fights, which, it had me minding my tongue because she can twist me up like a pretzel.
Yes, you gotta behave yourself.
I I do, and I know when I've pushed it too far, she's got a look and can tell an arm bar's right around the corner. So, but now she's had 5 or 6 years where she was a daily CrossFitter. Now she's eased back on that a couple times a week, and she's just became a certified yoga instructor 2 weeks ago. So she's really digging that kind of second chapter for her career.
That's great. I love it. So anything else you wanna say about the fam?
Uh,
Uh, so I know the girls are super smart. They always have a smile. I mean, they both have incredible personalities and just always happy, it seems like. And they work hard too. They're very focused, but they have fun.
yeah, they're just the exact opposite of me when it comes to that. They really take after their mom. I mean, they're both great students and take it serious. They study, they do their homework. They've both been straight A students forever. I think I graduated high school with a 2.5 or something. So luckily they take after mom. And that's the best thing about it is they're always happy. And I've been so lucky in my life as a father and a husband that we have spent so much time together that, Jessica and I were thinking the other day in 22 years after we had kids, and so in 20 years, I think her and I have only been away from the girls like 10 nights or something. And it's just how it worked out. We never really, we wanted our alone time and we had dates nights and things, but, we went somewhere, we took everybody and I wouldn't trade that for anything.
That's fantastic. That's wonderful. That is great. Well, let's talk a little bit about business because it's so you got a 2.5 in high school. I didn't know that, but you're getting straight A's in the world of financial planning and running a business. I can tell you that because I know what you've been doing all these years, and you're constantly getting better. You coaches, and it's just amazing. So, I guess first question is, how long have you been in the profession?
So basically since 1998. So I guess that's about 24 years now.
So you are seasoned.
I am seasoned. I feel like, I've seen a lot of things and I kind of started right in the tech boom bubble and
Yep.
then it was 3 years of misery and now when we're going through the stuff we're going through, I mean it still hurts, but when you look back, you're like, well, you've seen this before. It's just a
Yeah.
different story.
Exactly. What we're going through right now is nothing like '08, which was the worst in 100 years, and the 2000 tech crash was incredible. So far, it's not like that. We'll see. We don't know.
Yeah.
But this also will lead into the two main topics today that we're going to get to about how you got started in the profession. And this has an impact on what we call Gen 1 and Gen 2 and how you go about that. And then secondly, advisors are always kind of wanting to own their own office building for, some reasonably good reasons, but we're going to talk about the pros and cons of owning your own office building versus renting or leasing. And so tell us a little bit about your business. It's pretty interesting. There's a lot of folks who know you. There's some folks who don't. Their whole visual is beanbag chairs, and I'll let you finish the rest.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I still have the beanbag chairs, but I only bring them out for certain people. I think that as serious as I take the financial part of our business, the thing that I love about it the best is just the conversations that I'm able to have with clients, and I try to set up the entire experience that way. I don't have a conference table. I don't have filing cabinets. I mean, I've got couches and pillows, and sometimes people lay down on them, especially lately when they're seeing their statements. And I just kind of lucked into that. I mean, I always knew it was my style, but then I just thought, hey, I could do whatever I want. I want to set my office up like therapist's office, just because of the kind of conversations that comfort seems to open up towards. We're not It's not stuffy, it's not business. I've got people's favorite music playing when they walk in, not CNBC. I mean, kind of basic stuff, but what I think is pretty cool.
So, yeah, what I've found, and I know you have, and most of the financial planners that are true financial planners, it is about people. And we end up, I've always said that we have more impact in people's lives than a physician does until they get older. Everything from preventing divorces and getting kids through school and so on and so forth. But one of the things that's always amazed me, and obviously with you, this is the case, is that they share things with us that their closest friends have no idea.
It really is the truth, and I can't tell you how, as my client experience has adapted, especially over the last 3 or 4 years, when I moved to the couches and just did a real serious shift in how I work with people. I found that I had to really change how I did meetings, starting with the time. I used to be a very, process driven, 45 minutes, you're out the door. We talked about important stuff, but it was tight, and then I was on to the next one after making some notes. I deliberately changed that process, and what's happened out of that is that we talk business for 10 minutes and then spend an hour and a half talking about family and pets and all the wonderful stuff that really helps us, get to the bottom of the real person that we're helping, and,
Yes,
really do something transformative instead of talk about goals. We're talking about dreams. And I think those things are very different.
they are. You do quite a few unique things with your clients along those lines. Obviously, I mean, you know everything from their pets to their obviously their favorite hobbies and so on and so forth. But just kind of walk us through how that works. I know you do very special things for the clients. It's incredibly powerful and meaningful.
Yeah, that's been fun. And the cool thing about that is that I'm always trying to provide, an experience that they can't get anywhere else. And the way I do that is by really knowing them. And first and foremost, after every meeting, sometimes before, my assistant Sue has a different list of profile questions to go over, and none of them have to do with business. They're all personal. Your favorite charity, your favorite music, favorite band, you know, simple stuff like anniversaries. But, one of the cool things that we've done is when a client walks in the door, um, and they love the Rolling Stones, we've got the Rolling Stones playing when they walk in. And,
That's
it's just cool. And you
it
know what?
is.
Half the time they don't even notice. They think it's just a coincidence. But the second time they come in and it's playing, they're like, yeah, wow, you listened.
That is fantastic. And share a couple other things you do. Have you shared with me well, actually, I think in one of our retreats, you shared a lot of this. There's a lot of things you do to really drill down and get to know your clients besides beanbag chairs and laying on a couch.
Yeah, so I've got a pretty detailed, discovery process that I go through that's adapted from a lot of different coaches that I've used over the years. CEG was the first one. They have this whole client model that's, basically they give you 50 questions to get down to a client's personality. And I've adapted that with some, my own language and some of the Carl Richards stuff that, it's really all about life planning, even though I cringe at that because that reminds me of some weird idea from 20 years ago. But
Yeah.
that's not what I do, but that's kind of how I would describe it to an outsider. But just really asking the right questions. And I think it kind of goes back to, I think it was that Bill Bacharach book, that values based selling, where
Yep.
it's so uncomfortable, like, what's important about money to you, and then you ask it again, and then but you keep asking it. I kind of do that in a much softer conversational way to really find out what's making somebody tick. And once we know that what's really important to them, we can really tailor the experience that we provide before the meeting, during the meeting, and after the meeting to that client. So if I've got a client coming in that I know loves golf, their favorite golf magazine or something cool that I see at the bookstore is sitting there waiting for them, along with a sleeve of golf balls. If I've got a client that loves to cook, I'll have some really cool but inexpensive cooking item that I pick up from Williams Sonoma or Amazon that I know they're going to love and probably don't have. So trying to get something unique every time, it keeps it fresh, and it keeps it interesting for me because I've got a weird personality. I get bored with stuff. I got to keep it changing.
But I mean, how powerful is that for your clients? I mean, that is so special. It's, we're in a world we read about, well, 1% AUM, da, da, da. Well, it's the value in which you are providing is so powerful. It's amazing. I mean, talk about separating yourself from the quote unquote competition. And I've always said, if you're doing financial planning, doing things that you're doing, you really don't have competition. People aren't going to leave. But so a couple things. I know you've been involved in a number of coaching programs, and I've seen your business and practice morph, I guess, and develop and grow in different ways. Do you think coaching is I mean, it's been wonderful for you. Do you think it's something for everybody or is it not?
No, I definitely think it's something for everybody. And I think that those, the cool thing about like one on one coaching is, if you go to a big event like LPL's Focus, there's so much information and they're trying to give it to 5,000 people and find out what's interesting for all those people. And, I always feel like I'm really lucky if I get one or two nuggets out of it that I can bring back to my business. My experience, especially as I've grown older and more experienced is that with the right coach, you can focus on one or two of those nuggets that you find together with that coach and drill deep and then get some accountability around it. So for me, my last coach was, focused around client experience. And like I just locked into that. And I've just enjoyed it so much that, 2 years, I still feel like I'm doing something different every single day to stay on top of that and keep it good and fresh. And I don't think you can do that without a coach, quite frankly. I can't, anyways.
Well, I've watched the last 3 or 4 years and the amount of work you've put into this, but it is so incredible, so powerful. I mean, can you imagine going to any professional and being treated like that and so deep that the way you're doing it, and plus it's fun for you. We're in a people business. We're here to help people, and you've just taken it to the nth degree. And by the way, you got from a 2.5 GPA in high school to a 4.0 in your business. It's amazing what you've done. You
Well,
are a great student of the business and of the profession.
well, thanks, Don. And I guess I'm glad that the consortium didn't ask for my report card. Um, but now I think it's just a function of my personality. Like I want to keep it fresh for me.
Yeah,
And, in order to do that, you gotta try some different things.
you get bored and stale, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, in terms of financial planning, so when I started 40 some years ago, and most of you have seen one of my original financial plans, it was hand typed and I did all the calculations. It was 100 pages. We charged 10,000 bucks for it. And then nobody implemented. Why? I mean, you paid all this money. It's about 33,000 in today's world. And we quickly went to one-page executive summaries because that's all people want. And I've always said, with a prospective client, I said, when I go to a doctor's office, first of all, I don't like medical terminology. I want them to speak to me in English. If there are choices, I want to know what the choices are and what their recommendation is and why. That's simple. And, in our annual progress review meetings, the clients just want to know they're okay. They're fine. So you're a one-page financial plan guy, right?
I am. I read that Carl Richards book, I don't know how many years ago now, 6 or 7, it seems like. And, I was kind of that way before because, I like simple stuff and to-do lists. And I like to be able to cross it off the list. It's like, listen, I want to do this. I want to max my SEP out this year. And in order to do that, I got to save 5,000 bucks a month. And then once I start saving 5 grand a month, I can cross it off the list. And incredibly enough, I've found that my clients, for the most part, want exactly the same thing. They want one page. They want to know, where am I at? What do I need to do to different to get to where I want to go? And what do I have to do now to get there? And what do I have to do in a couple of years to get there? And really, that's it. So I use a one-page plan. It is literally one piece of paper that is set up just like a to-do list. And I tell people, I said, put this on your desk, on your fridge, wherever you need to put it in order to get those to do now things done right away. I want to cross it off. Then I want you to not worry about it for a while and you can feel a sense of accomplishment. And that tends to really work for my clients. And it creates a wonderful follow-up touch for me to say, "Hey, did you max out your 457 plan? Or have you started looking for financial aid for your kid or whatever it is?" It's just a great excuse to spend more time with your client.
So do you do any retirement planning projections behind the scenes to kind of get an idea, are they on track, not on track, and to come up with your one-page plan? How does that work?
I do. I'm really simplified that into something that for the vast majority of the people that I work with, that's exactly what they need to know. They need to know, here's what I'm doing today. Is it going to be enough to get me to where I want to go? And I use Riskalyze and their retirement map module for that. Uh, Super simple. It's not a detailed financial plan, but the reason I use it is because it's easy and it's interactive. So when people are in the office, we'll sit down and I'll print them one copy that's like the ideal situation. And then we'll say, hey, what if you retired early? Here's what it would look like. And it just makes that conversation of kind of a dry, boring review of numbers, more engaging and interesting because they control the variables and can see what it does.
Yeah, they're driving it. They get to see the impact of different choices, right? Delay retirement, spend a little less, all those kinds of things, and they can also see the impact of different asset allocations, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, you're taking not enough risk. We can't grow enough. You're going to have to work 7 more years. If we take the appropriate amount of risk, get enough stock in there that you're still comfortable, but we're growing, hey, you can retire 2 years before that. And I think people don't realize that that's the how that can help them towards their destination. Many times, especially right now when it's scary, my experience has been that people are just worried about, oh, what are they gonna lose? That's a function of risk. To me, I think, it's equally impactful to say, hey, here's the real risk. You don't have enough stock. You ain't gonna be able to retire when you want to.
Yeah. Yeah, so when I started, literally a 100-page bound book, and here's your plan, here's what you're gonna do. And today, because of technology, the clients make all the decisions and they see the impact of the choices. I mean, it's just amazing what has happened in the last decade with technology and the client interactions. They're
Well,
making the choices. You're not telling them what to do, right?
no, I mean, and that's the cool part about it is that they're doing all the hard work and picking the variables. You're just helping them understand it. And I mean, that's what makes it so cool.
So, I call them progress review meetings only because some consulting firms said that people don't like the word review meetings. And it makes sense to me because we are reviewing their progress, correct? So in an annual, I don't know what you call your meetings, but what percent of the meeting is directed towards the investment portfolios?
Very little. I'd say, 10% probably.
Yeah.
And, we'll take a look at their success meter on Riskalyze, say, hey, here's how much this has impacted this, your ability to retire on time. But then, I think they also need to understand that you're like today, you're looking at it from the middle of the fire. We're if we looked at it 6 months ago or 9 months ago or a year ago, it's totally different. It's fluid. What's this effect on the long term? And for most people, it's not very much,
It isn't, is it?
right? As long as they don't shoot themselves in the foot and do all the wrong things.
Right. You don't have a loss unless you sell.
Exactly.
Do you do the money management yourself? Do you outsource it? What's your philosophy on that?
So my philosophy is that I don't have any initials behind my name. I want to spend my time with my clients. So I outsource almost everything. 99% of my investment activity is outsourced, even for myself. I practice what I preach. I basically use two money managers, SEI, because they offer so many different things on their platform from mutual funds to actively tax managed, separately managed accounts. And it just works for me. And, I don't like to make the investment performance the reason for somebody to continue with me as their advisor. I want to be able to fire them for one thing, the money manager, make changes without having to fire myself. And I don't feel like I'm qualified to pick funds or stocks. And quite frankly, I'm not very interested in that.
Yeah, you're interested in the clients and their lives, and that kinda leads to my next question. I think you've already answered it, but what do you like about your profession? I think I know the answer, but
Yeah, I mean it's kind of, you know, all the same. I mean, I love conversations. I love spending time with people. And it's probably cheesy, but like I love helping people. Now, I'll tell you, I mean, I didn't get in the business to help people. I got in the business to make money and feed my family, and then I figured out that you could do that by helping people. And that's really what I enjoy about the business is just spending time with people, listening, helping them, making them feel comfortable and calm.
yes, this is a incredible profession. You get to do great things with people, helping them, like you said, and make a damn good living. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So, you're a good business guy. I know that. What are some of your biggest challenges running the business?
You know, I'd say every single one of my challenges with my business is me. That's my problem. Between my ears is an interesting place. And I think that, that's my number one challenge is I think when you're on your own, even if you're lucky enough to have a group of people like IFG, sometimes you get wrapped up in your own head. And for me, I tend to focus on all the things that can go wrong, especially as I get a little further along in my business. For me, I built a decent business, and I kind of worry more about how it's going to explode than how I can continue to be really good. And that's my own fault. There's nothing really driving that other than it's just in between my ears. And I think for me, the other thing that I've struggled with the last 5 or 6 years is, you know, just being pretty good at what I do and having a pretty good business. I think some of that hunger is gone. It's not I don't work harder so I can have a nicer car or any of that. What drove me for the first 15 years of my career doesn't drive me anymore. And I'm fairly comfortable. And I just got an interesting book. It's called The Comfort Crisis, and it talks all about it. And I started reading it, and I had to put it down because I'm like, oh my God, they're talking about me.
You know, I don't know that that's necessarily unusual. I've seen so many advisors and watched their careers, and there seems to be an apex in the careers. So that's interesting. So it's between your ears. That is the challenge in your business.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Join the
that's the number one. Of the 100 problems I have, 99 of them are between my ears.
I guess join the club, right?
Yeah, exactly. You made me feel a little better that I'm not the only one.
You're not. You're not. We all deal with it. So I'm going to ask you to describe your talents and strengths in 3 words.
I think my number one strength is I'm empathetic. And that's just
Yeah.
something my dad used to tell me. He's like, the best thing a business person can have that's going to work with people is empathy. And you can't fake it if you
No, you can't.
go as deep as I go with people.
I understand you have several boxes of tissues in your office.
I do. And every once in a while, I'll need to use one myself. So, that's definitely my number one strength. I'd say I'm very adaptable. I I don't want to change just to change, but I feel like I've had a lot of, different kind of events and circumstances come out at me in the last 20 years, and I feel like now that I'm comfortable adapting to different things, I'm not rigid. I'll try anything. I'll do anything.
And I know that up close and personal. I've watched you over the years.
And then, I it's weird to kind of describe myself. Like, that's kind of a tough question for me to answer. Those two are easy, but I think the other word is I'd say I'm kind of like an iceberg. I mean, I I think that what I show on the surface is only about 10% of the person I am. And, even though I'm very open and, I'll help people talk to anybody, I think there's a lot more to me than meets the eye. And that's helped me with my business. I like to learn. I like to get involved in stuff that's totally different than what I think some people might expect.
That is a fascinating self-observation, an iceberg. I love that. We're probably all somewhat like that, I suppose.
I think
Yeah,
so.
yeah, I've watched you through the years. You are a learner. You're passionate about improving, getting better, very creative. So, a couple simple questions. When did you join the consortium? What year was that? I think I remember, but
It was 2011.
2011, that's correct. And why did you join the consortium at the time? And what is different about your view of the consortium today, many years later?
So in 2011, when I joined the group, really I did it out of fear. I was scared to death. I was at Securities America. It was the only broker dealer I'd ever been at, and it was going bad. And my perception of it was that my business was going to go really bad if I didn't get out of there. And I started, kind of looking and interviewing broker dealers. I got some trips to some places and, pretended like I knew what questions to ask. But then I was like, wow, I have no idea what I'm doing. The only thing I know about my broker dealer is what the payout is. And luckily, I had a friend who I'd met through a consulting program uh, say, hey, you should talk to Don Patrick. They've got a whole group of people that love the kind of stuff that you're afraid of and have done all the legwork already. I think they can help you out, and kind of went from there.
Yep, I remember. So, the consortium is the brain trust, it's the sharing and the caring, and you're great at it. You didn't see that in the very beginning. I know that it was chaotic then. So, has your view of the consortium evolved over these so many years?
Yeah, and really, it's changed a lot in the last handful of years, just because I think my involvement has gotten a lot better. Those first few years, I just kind of did it out of fear and kind of latched on. Even though I loved everybody I talked to, I'm 1,000 miles away from everybody, and didn't really get the feeling. Plus, I had some weird things come up where I couldn't make retreats, so I didn't really get to know anybody for a long time.
Well, yes, you were nicknamed the hologram man. You almost died twice, I think, and so you missed like 3 retreats, and I go, "Does Matt Carpinelli really exist?"
Yeah, exactly. It's like people would come up and touch me, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" You know? And they're like, "We just want to see if you were real," because I missed, a bunch of those first ones. But now it's like, man, as I've been lucky enough to, talk a little at the retreats and get to know people and share my experience, I think that's made just a huge difference for me. Like, getting to know the group and that everybody's in it for the same reason. And I feel like I'm out on an island a lot by myself. And now I know that, hey, I could just send a note to Andrews or my mastermind group or you, of course, and they might not have the answers, but I can talk it out, and 9 times out of 10, that's what I need. So I think getting more involved and like being able to kind of teach the things that I've learned have made me just a better student and a better member of the group.
Yes, you've contributed so much. You are really one of, the great thought leaders in the group, and yeah, so that's fantastic. It's one of the hardest things for us is we know you're on an island, and to create that community, and even though you're 1,000 miles away, you're literally a phone call or Zoom call away.
It's true, and I feel more like that every year, that I'm closer than the miles might
Yeah,
say.
yeah, in today's world of technology, definitely. So, let's jump into the main topics. This is fabulous learning about you. I know quite a bit, but there's a lot of folks that didn't know a lot of this. I think there was a lot to take away from it as well for their businesses. Uh, the first topic I want to get into is I know how you got started in the business, and there's lessons here. We have a lot of what we call G1, G2s going on, where G1 is the main advisor, older advisor, whatever, bringing in either younger people or family members, and there's this notion of do you bring them right in out of school or do you have them go out in the real world and see the real world before they're invited into the business? So if you want to kind of share with us how you got started and with your dad and yeah, how he didn't let you come in and how that all went down.
Yeah, man, it's so funny when I talk about that. It feels like it was 100 years ago, and then it feels like it was yesterday. Like the emotion with it, because like I always knew I had an incredible relationship with my dad. I mean, I was like the luckiest kid on earth. It wasn't always perfect, but like, we really loved each other, and we turned out to be. He was my best friend for sure, and I remember him when I was in second grade. He came in to get a slideshow presentation to my second grade class, Mrs. Datola, about inflation. And it was this little green monster called inflation. And I don't know, I get that's got to be like 1982, 1983. But I remembered it and I was like, man, I want to work with my dad. And my dad was just a great entrepreneur, and really he was a real estate guy that he sold investment properties and then managed them with a property management company. And the way that he got his clients was by working with small accounting firms. And he would partner with these guys and say, hey, we can write all this depreciation off. I think it was 1 year, maybe it was two or three or four, but you could depreciate the property like that. And the accountants loved it because they could give their tax clients a break, and real estate was cheap and all these things. But he got so good at it, what he just started doing was buying the tax businesses. to kind of go along with it, and ended up with, 3 or 4 tax businesses that he had bought, and kind of started doing some cross sales with some insurance and some annuities and things. And when I got out of school, I was like, man, I want to come to work for you. We could, it'd be awesome, And he's like, no, no chance. He's like, I know how to do what I do really well. I don't have any idea how to train you to do what I do. Said, you got to go figure that out somewhere else. And then 5 or 10 years, you come to work with me, and then we'll go from there. So, after begging him and doing the whole deal, I went to work for a big life insurance company and sold group 401k and health insurance, and, liked it, but really it was smile and dial. And I was in downtown, and it was a suit every day. And, it was just not what I had always envisioned. So every time I would see my dad, he wanted to kill me, but I was like, hey man, can I come to work for you? And finally, for some reason, he's like, "All right, you can come to work for me, but here's what you're going to do. You're going to do tax returns. You're not selling anything to anybody. You don't get to talk to clients. You're not going to be a stockbroker or a real estate salesman." He's like, "You're going to do tax returns, and from January to April, I expect you here 12 hours a day, and I'm not going to lunch with you. You're going to be a tax guy, and that's what you're going to do, and you're going to figure it out." So I was like, okay, I still get to work for my dad, and I figured he'd cave a little bit on that. And well, he didn't. And it turned out that after doing 4 or 500 tax returns, like my second year, I determined that I would never wanted to look at another tax return again. And but what I was really good at was not doing taxes, but finding opportunities when I was meeting with those tax people to do their tax return, that we could help them in other ways, IRA contribution, too many dividends or capital gains distributions, didn't have a rental property. So I'd give them to my dad, and it turned out like I was giving him 5 a day or something. And it turned out to be just kind of a monster. And he was like, you gotta either stop this, or we gotta figure out a different way, because he's like, I can't keep up. And then in the second year, he let me start working on doing IRAs and rollovers and stuff. I already had my Series 6. But at that time, we didn't have any I mean, I think he had 4 or 5 million dollars in annuities and VUL, and a handful of Fidelity Advisor funds. But then we kind of came up with this brilliant idea after my second tax season to really tackle that and try to turn it into, I guess now what you would call wealth management practice.
Fabulous. So, actually, the fact that he recognized you didn't have the skills to train you was pretty amazing. So he said, "No, you can't join. Go out and make your bones somewhere else and get trained somewhere else, and then we'll have that conversation." And then he turns you over to the tax guys, right? And then you start converting all these tax clients into wealth management clients. So I got a question for you. Juliana has an interest in your business, correct?
Yes,
So if she's serious and wants to continue to pursue it, what are you going to do? Are you going to let her in the business? Or are you going to tell her to go make her bones somewhere else?
I'm going to tell her to go make her bones somewhere else, because I know that's one of those difficult fatherly decisions that I thought I totally disagreed with at the time. But Now I look at it and I'm like going through the same thing my dad did because I'm thinking, boy, I don't want to screw this kid up. I do things my way, and some of that's right, but some of it's really, really wrong. And I think that the thing that I learned in my training, I had to go to like a month-long training where I stayed at a hotel and all that was, all that basic prospecting and sales stuff that we all don't like to talk about because we're life planners and wealth managers. But when it comes down to it, I think that's probably the most important part of it is the most important part of building your business.
Of any business.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can have the best mousetrap in the world, but nobody knows about it.
Exactly. And I learned all that stuff away from my dad. And then he helped me learn the other stuff for a year or two, which was, how to listen, the stuff that's hard to learn at a big corporate training seminar.
Yeah. So this is I wanted to have this conversation with you. There's quite a bit going on right now with Gen 1, Gen 2. Training is hard. Most of the Gen 1s have never trained. They don't have a training program, and it's a challenge, and there's more of this coming down the pike. And so I think really good words of wisdom from somebody who lived through it.
Well, I tell you, I think that all that experience of how my dad made me handle that helped me a great deal when things got tough in my business and my life, and I didn't know it was the right stuff at the time. But when I look back now, of course, I mean, it made me the person I am and the father I am too.
That's amazing.
So I I can't say it enough. And my daughter and I, Juliana, we were just having the conversation last week. It was Parents Weekend up at CU Boulder, and the amazing time to be a young person in this business is that everybody's hiring. It's like every time you open investment news, JP Morgan's hiring 7,000 people in wealth management. Fidelity's hiring 10,000 people in wealth management. I mean, maybe that changes a little if the economy turns down, but that didn't change demographics. And I think it's a great time to go to work for those companies. There seems to be a lot of opportunity.
It is. I would agree. Now, on to the second topic. This is always a question mark with financial planners in their business, and that is, do they own the office space, pay the rent, build up the equity, or do they lease it? And the reason I want to have this conversation with you is you're a real estate guy. How many single family homes did you and your brother manage at one point?
About 1,500.
So you know a little bit about real estate, don't you?
Yeah, yeah.
And you owned your own office space for many years, correct?
Yeah, for about 14, 15 years, something like that.
And I believe in the past year you sold your office space and now you're leasing office space.
I am. I don't remember what commercial it was. Maybe Alka-Seltzer. Oh, Roto Relief it is.
So walk us through the pros and cons of both of them.
Well, I got a big list of cons.
Okay. Well, let's hear it.
Yeah, the pro for me, maybe that's easier, was appreciation. And that's just dumb luck and taking some risk and getting a loan. That was the pro for me, was the appreciation. Everything else, I feel like the benefits that I've heard about are, you know, something you'd learn in college, a theory, but in practice turns out weren't as great as everybody said.
So one of the benefits that people tend to look at is that their business is paying rent to this building they own, and it's paying it down where you're actually building up equity in another investment, and it's low risk because you're the tenant. How do you address that?
Well, I think there's some truth to that. But, again, one of those things that people don't think about, and I know about Colorado real estate. I don't know about anywhere else. I don't know about Georgia or South Carolina or anything, but everything is expensive here. And it's been expensive for a long, long time. Less so when I bought my building, but it was still expensive. And commercial interest rates a lot higher than personal property, than your
Yep.
primary residence. I mean, no comparison, with different requirements, different terms. That all those loans are balloon loans. You're lucky if you get them to AM it for 20 years. So your payment is super, super high, and most of it's interest. So, the equity, there's some truth to that. Your business is paying down, but the rate's super high. You got to jump through all kinds of hoops, and you got to own it for a long time for that equity event, that appreciation event to happen, and you have to sell it. If I wasn't didn't throw a fit, I last year with my building because of a bunch of bad stuff that happened, I wouldn't have realized the equity event. I wouldn't have realized the appreciation. And all those years of me paying myself rent that turned out to be taxable income, no matter how you do it, you get to shelter it through depreciation and expenses somewhat, but not all of it.
That's right.
It's also taxable income to you personally.
That's
So,
true.
right? It's about half of as good as it sounds, I think.
So, what are some of the other cons?
Well, the worst part about it is headaches. And in my town in Denver, nobody will take on a single property as a property manager. So I was in that business. I know it. If we had one guy come to us with one unit, we'd be like, yeah, maybe we'll help you, but we're going to charge you 15% of rent collected every single year. And that turns the financials and cash flow upside down on any property.
Yeah.
So you either have to own a property management business, which I did for maybe the first 10 years I owned that building. And it was a much less headache because if a toilet broke or a pipe froze, I'd have my property management get one of our maintenance guys and they'd go and fix it. But when I sold that business, I had to manage it myself. And literally every single time I would try to go on vacation, a pipe would break, a toilet would overflow, somebody would have a drug overdose in the backyard, somebody would
Oh my
crash into it going 80 miles an hour.
god.
Uh, so it's a headache. And for me, I think personally, it was a major stressor, but business wise, it took time away from the stuff that I really enjoyed and was really good at and that provided my living.
You made some great points. So, yes, you're paying yourself rent. However, it's taxable income. Yes, there's a little bit of depreciation, and I think it's a 27 and a half year. I don't forget what it is
Yeah,
now,
that's
but
what it is.
it's not a lot. And then all the typical things of being a landlord. Even though it's yours, you still have to deal with it all.
That's exactly right. And, things go wrong in an office that don't go wrong at your house. And weird things can happen. And There's a different code and a different way of handling those things as you deal with, government entities and things with a commercial property that just make it harder. For instance, like I had 5 furnaces and 5 air conditioning units. One goes out, the one or two you have at your house, well, I mean, that stinks. It's 10 grand. If you got 5 of them, it's 100 grand to fix. And of course, it's very difficult to match them up. It's kind of like tires now on a on a nice car. You can't get one, you got to get four.
Right. Yeah, so yes, you're dealing with a different regulatory environment with the local city, county, ordinances, licenses, a lot of things like that that you wouldn't normally deal with in a residential property, right?
You have to deal with that. And the absolute worst thing is property tax. So finally last year, what got me was my property tax was going up 50% a year.
Oh my gosh.
And it started off being, for years it was about $10,000 a year, which, manageable, right? But by the end of last year, it was 33,000, and the monthly property tax payment, if I were to amortize it out, was more than my mortgage payment on the property.
That's insane.
So that's really hard to cash flow against. I'd gotten to the point where in my business it evolved in such a way where I used to occupy the whole thing. And then for years, I occupied 2 of the 3 levels, and that worked pretty well. When I occupied one and had to get a tenant, even though I was getting good rent and getting reimbursed for utilities, the overall cash flow, even with me paying rent to myself, it'd come out to about $500 a month. And then when property taxes went to 1,500 or $2,500 a month, that all went out the window, and I was leaking.
Wow. So now you're leasing, and if the toilet overflows, you just call the landlord, right?
Yeah, best thing that ever happened to me. Like the third day I was there, I went to plug something in, and the AC plug didn't work. So I called the guy and said, "Hey, get somebody over here. The power's not working."
So how do your lease payments compare to what your carrying costs were when you owned the building? Is it about the same, a little less, a little more?
It's so I have to think about what the net ended up being from certainly the last few years when the property taxes went up. My net outlay is about the same leasing
Without the headache.
without the headache. The gross is totally different. I've got it's a great time to lease. So I think my timing was good there. But I've got about 1,800 feet and it's $18 a foot gross. So that means all the utilities and everything are included in
Yeah,
that.
that's a
So
great rate. That's a great rate.
it's a great rate. It's $2,300 a month, roughly, something like that. And in my building, utilities were 1,500, mortgage was 16, property taxes were 25, plus all the other stuff, the insurance on the property, commercial property is expensive to insure, blah blah blah. You got all these other expenses. I mean, I was spending 60 or 70,000 a year, and if I lost my tenant, I would have been losing 3 or 4 grand a month.
Yeah. That was a great insight into the choice of owning versus renting an office space with somebody who kind of knows real estate and has done it for years. That was very helpful. It was great insights. I'm going to kind of close this thing out asking you one last question, and that is if you could share something about yourself that others might not know,
Hmm.
besides being an iceberg.
Yeah. Well, let's see. How about this? I hate tuna noodle casserole. And
I'm taking notes.
yeah, and the reason I know this is that the one time I ever had it served to me in my entire life was when I met my in-laws for the first time. I will eat anything, and anybody that knows me, I mean, I'll eat it all. I'm not afraid to try anything to eat. Love it all. It's maybe one of my problems, but my in-laws had me over and they asked my wife or my girlfriend at the time, "What's Matt like?" And she's like, "Oh, he'll eat anything. He's a human garbage disposal." And we get over there and it's tuna noodle casserole and I couldn't eat even a bite of it.
I'll tell Ramey to make sure that is not on the meals for the retreat.
Yeah,
Okay.
please, please.
It's good to know.
Yeah.
Well, Matt, this has been fantastic. You've been great. Learned so much, and you're so engaging, and you're the guinea pig, man. This is episode number 1. You're the guy.
All right. All right.
I wanna thank you so much, and gonna go ahead and sign off now. Wanna thank you all for listening. I think you're gonna get a lot out of these, and I know you're gonna get a lot out of this interview with Matt. Any comments, questions, just email them to me, dpatrick@thebraintrust.net, and we'll see you on the next one. That's it for today's show. Thanks for listening. If you've got something to share, give me a call. We want to know what works. Until next time.